Hello and welcome to episode 42 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's eternal search to uncover the multitude of reasons people get hooked by and on this crazy game. My name's Rod Morri, and on this episode we're delving into the world of golf administration with a slight detour into the world of gender politics. If you're a first-time visitor, welcome. Make sure to check out our previous episodes either by subscribing or following in your favourite podcast app, or head to golfaustralia.com.au and click on the podcast tab. For seasoned listeners, welcome back for an interview that I found especially interesting. Andrea Watson is the General Manager at one of Australia's most prestigious golf clubs, Yarra on the Melbourne Sandbelt. Now, being one of only a handful of women GMs in the game, it's natural to wonder what that journey's been like for Andrea. And it's a theme that we cover and return to throughout the course of our conversation. But it's only one part of Andrea's story. From her start as a waitress at the then Peninsula Golf Club to 2 IC at Royal Melbourne Golf Club, including 2 President's Cups and a first-hand look at the inner workings of Augusta National Golf Club, it's been quite the golf journey, and Andrea's resume speaks for itself. Articulate, intelligent, thoughtful, and not afraid to speak her mind, it's no surprise that Andrea is highly respected among peers and colleagues alike. I caught up with Andrea at her office at Yarra recently, and apologies in advance for some occasional annoying bumping sounds that you'll hear throughout the interview, one of the dangers of recording on the road. So Andrea Watson, the GM at Yarra Golf Club. My goodness, I'm looking forward to chatting to you, but we must start as we always do by saying thank you for taking the time. The thing about golf is a commitment, so we appreciate you putting in the time to do it. It's our jumping off point, the name of the podcast, The Thing About Golf. It's so many different things to so many different people. What is the thing about golf for Andrea Watson?
I think there's a range of different things in regards to the thing about golf. From my perspective, I look at it from an administration point of view. I've been in the golf industry for a long time. I started at Peninsula Kingswood Golf Club, which was
right down at the bottom. Yeah, it's right. Andrea, right down at the very bottom of the pecking order. Fantastic club in Melbourne here.
Yes, and it was then Peninsula Country Golf Club, and it was a very different golf club then. Mm-hmm. I was there for 9 years, and I got headhunted across to Kingston Heath Golf Club. And I worked with Paul Rack then, an amazing person, and honestly, what a great mentor he was. A great man in the industry, and to have that opportunity to work with him was really amazing. Then he left to go to Royal Melbourne, and I was working with Greg Chappell, once again a great mentor, a real icon in the industry. And then from there, I went to Royal Melbourne. I was headhunted across to Royal Melbourne Golf Club, and I was there for 9 years, and I was asked to assist to deliver the 2011 President's Cup, and then stayed on until 2019 President's Cup, and what great tournaments they were, so really amazing. And then was asked to take the job here at Yarra as a General Manager, and I'm very excited. To be honest with you, it's been a very difficult year because I came in the first week of March.
Oh, fabulous.
And within 2 weeks we were in COVID.
Lockdown and disaster all around.
So we were sort of flying the ship as we were building it, so to speak. So it was really crazy. It was a really crazy time, a really crazy 6 months. But I was lucky enough to have the support of the general managers of the Sandbelt, and we met regularly by Zoom every single week, and just mashed out ideas and talked about what each person was doing, and sort of bounced things off each other, which was really fantastic. Having that support was unbelievable.
There's already about 10 episodes in there. Each of those rabbit holes we could go down for an hour, no question about it. Just the 2 President's Cups alone must have been staggering. Where did the golf journey start for you, though, Andrea? I don't imagine at school as a 5-year-old when people said, what do you want to be when you grow up? You said, I want to be the GM of a golf club. How did the golf part start for you?
Well, actually, it was by accident. I have 6 children, and I just had my last child, and I really wanted to go back to work, and I'd been in the hospitality industry, so just down the road from where I lived was Peninsula Country Golf Club, and so I just happened to apply for a job there in their dining room, and they gave me the job straight away.
You? Had you ever played the game? Anybody in your family play the game?
No, didn't know anything about it. I'd come from hotels and those type of things, so no, I didn't know anything about golf. I wouldn't have been able to tell you what side of the ball, the tee you need to stand on, or what an Ambrose was, or anything. So I was a complete novice to the golf business. But my husband played golf, and all I knew about that was that every second Sunday he wasn't at home.
He disappeared for hours and hours and hours on end, which is an issue, and we'll come to that. And there's some issues for golf to confront with some of those things as well. It might be impossible to answer now all these years later, but can you recall what your sense of golf was as a non-golfer? I'm a believer that golf has an image problem outside of the game. Can you recall what your take on golf was before you were in the industry?
I don't think I had any real exposure other than the fact that my husband's golf club sat in the garage and that he disappeared every second week. But other than that, I really didn't have any exposure to golf at all. I didn't really go to any tournaments, or I didn't go out and play any games with him. But as soon as I started in the golf industry, the second that I started at Peninsula Kingswood, I had an instant interest in it. So we took some of our children out and we would play golf as a family, and my younger son would hit a ball and he absolutely loved the game. The others not so much. I think you need to get that grassroots thing going with children. If they don't have that, they were into cricket and football and all those type of things, and they didn't sort of get a love for it later on as they got older. Yeah. One of my daughters, my oldest daughter, she took to it like a duck to water, and she's fantastic. Right. She lives in America, and they play social golf. Yeah. So it's a whole different thing for her.
The whole trajectory of a bunch of lives pivoted on your employment.
Exactly.
At Peninsula there, which is interesting in itself. Did you find the game welcoming? And that's separate from the question of, did you find the industry welcoming to an outsider? We have our own language that we talk in golf, as you would well know now. There's a reason it feels exclusionary to people who don't play, because we do have our own media, our own heroes as players. We've got our own language, fairways and birdies and greens in regular. None of these things mean anything to people outside of golf. Did you find it a welcoming environment, the game part of it?
I didn't. No, I found it really intimidating. From a woman's point of view, it's very male-dominated, the industry itself, and even now, I struggle with the whole thing with getting out and playing with the men. I'd much rather play with the women, and I don't feel there's so much pressure from that. But no, I didn't find it welcoming in any way, shape or form. I came into golf very late, and I played softball, so I found it really difficult to go from the swing up the top to the swing down the bottom. So I was always topping the ball, and I found it very frustrating to do. And I took lessons from my husband, and I will tell anyone, don't do that. It's the worst thing you can possibly ever do.
If he was any good, he'd be a pro, Andrea. If anyone who's not a pro is not in a position to give you any kind of a lesson about the game, if we all remember that, we'd probably all be
exactly right.
Somewhat better off. The game itself, did it grab you?
It did. From the get-go, it really did grab me. But I just found that I struggled with it a little bit. And I think if you don't take lessons to start with to give you some basics, it can be very difficult for you because you find it really frustrating. And when we play when we're older, we're adapting our bodies differently. We don't have that natural swing that young people get when they just start from grassroots, because they just pick up the ball and they adapt their natural swing to what they need to do. But when you're doing it as an older person, you sort of really have to get your whole body to understand there's a whole different thing. So while I loved it, I found it very frustrating.
Yeah, there's a lifetime of movement patterns to try to overcome, isn't there, in golf, which is an unnatural move in itself. Kids are great at seeing something on the TV and copying that. They're very malleable. They're plastic, aren't they? They can do anything. Let's talk about the industry, which I think is probably more important, having now gone from being a non-golfer to a golfer.
Yes.
You bring a perspective that I think many of us have forgotten, because that happened not that long ago for you, whereas for me it was maybe nearly 40 years ago I got into golf, so I'm used to just being a golfer. we'll talk about gender and some of those things a bit later because I think there's some
Sure.
important issues there. But just for the game itself, what do you see as the barriers to people becoming involved in the game? And what can golf as an amorphous mass, what can we do about that?
Introducing young people at grassroots levels is really, really important. Whether they stay in the game or not is irrelevant, but if you can capture them early, you're going to get them no matter what, because it's such an amazing game. And you look at older people and younger people both playing together, and you'll have people that are as young as 6 years old playing, and you can have people as old as 90 playing. It's such an amazing game to play right across the board throughout your whole life. And so I think that golf actually focuses far too much on that middle age where they drop off, whereas I think that, to me, that's not important at all. It's just getting them to understand that it is a great game to start with, and if you can capture them in schools and sport and all those type of things, you're going to get them later on, because it is such a great sport to play. And I think that's where we miss the targets. We don't spend enough time with grassroots golf.
I'm pleased to hear you say it, in as much as I think golf makes a mistake in who we target. We seem to have trouble accepting as an industry that we're going to lose people for a portion of their life where they're too busy to do golf. But there's no problem with that if you've exposed them early, is there? Because they'll come back later.
They will.
If you miss them younger, you don't get them later.
Exactly.
And the mid-40s is probably really the target market for golf. Once kids are starting to be more independent, work things change and slow down, people are in a position to then spend a bit and take a bit more time for golf. I'm not sure that we've accepted that. I wonder why that is. What do you think?
I think that we feel that there are demographics missing out of our membership, especially for private golf clubs. We look at our membership and we say,
Andrea?
I think that there is, and we do all we can to try and encourage people of those age brackets to join. But the thing is, there's a lot of what would I call them, social clubs around which appeal to that age group a lot more, and I could name a few of them that actually do that, and they cater to, you pay a fee and you get access to particular clubs, and you can go and just socialise and play with your friends at one club and another club and another club, and just enjoy that part without the really big commitment of it. And I think that's the area that they need to stay in for a little bit, and then move across to full membership once they have the capabilities financially and also time constraints to be able to do that. So I think that we worry about between the ages of 21 and 40 when we really shouldn't be concerned about it, because they're still playing golf. They're just not playing at clubs and those type of things. They're very social creatures at that age, and that's all they want.
As a business model, does the club as a notion still work, the golf club, as we're used to it in Australia? Golf is built on the club model in Australia.
You're talking about club membership or clubs in general?
Clubs as a membership model. Yarra is a perfect example, and one of the more prestigious clubs here in Australia and on the sandbelt. Obviously, there are certain clubs that are more appealing more broadly. This is a premium product, if you want to put it that way. But for the suburban golf club model, the semi-private model, does that, as a business model, does it still make sense?
I think it does. I think that people like the idea of community, and I think that's what golf clubs offer, is a sense of community, being able to come back and socialise with people and have friendships which are broad. They're right across the spectrum of business. There's, from doctors to students, and they can all socialise together. And I think that golf clubs provide a sense of community, which is really lovely. I think the business model works really well, and I think that semi-private and private golf clubs have different aspects of their business that they deal with. A semi-private golf club are dealing with trying to manage their private membership as well as trying to manage the public, whereas for private golf clubs, we're looking specifically to be member first and manage our members, which is a whole different kettle of fish.
And I'm sure each model comes with its own challenges, different challenges. One's not easier than the other, is it? They're just different challenges.
They're definitely different.
To satisfy a customer base. I think a GM at a golf club has multiple customer bases to try and satisfy at once, and often get pulled in different directions.
You're right, Rod, absolutely.
Come to some of that later on. I suppose that sort of begs the question, Andrea. When you look ahead, what do you see the golf industry as being? And I'm interested in your perspective particularly because I think we do a lot of talking in golf amongst ourselves about what golf might look like or maybe should be. We often don't get the perspective of our potential and future customers, those outside the game. And I'm intrigued that you came to the game later through work. I really think you bring a unique perspective. How might we have got to you earlier?
It's an interesting question. I think for me particularly it would have been difficult because I was a mum and 6 children and all those things would have taken up my time no matter what. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that the golf industry would have got me any earlier than that. But I did spend a lot of time socialising with friends who also didn't play golf, and if there was something that was more lighthearted, a lighter type of game where you could, you look at X-Golf, for instance, what a great innovation and what a great thing to start people off who just want to have a little bit of fun and who don't have a lot of time on their hands. It's a great innovation and I think that would have probably got me in earlier. There's a lot of video games around now for golf and those type of things, but in my day, I'm ancient, so there was no. It's okay. You're among friends. There was no such thing as that. So I don't know that getting me in earlier would have. There would have been a lot of things, except probably if they'd introduced it into schools.
So had you experienced golf at school, you still might have taken all that time off golf, but it would have been a much easier return.
Exactly.
It's the sort of thing you can think, can't you?
Exactly, because I did actually start softball at school and I loved it and I played it later on too as well. But I think if golf had been introduced at school, I would have probably loved that as well. Because
golf's got the great advantage that once knees and hips and shoulders can no longer do netball, tennis, hockey, and some of those more intense sort of sports, golf's a fabulous option for those who have that competitive gene and still want that outlet. Golf's fabulous for that, isn't it? And I've always found in talking to people who've come to the game later in life, they almost always say, I wish I'd taken this up years earlier because it's so much easier if you've had some exposure early on.
I do agree with that. And I think for women it's different too because men try to whack the skin off the ball all the time. So I honestly believe that they end up by having more hip and shoulder problems than women do because we tend to hit the ball a little bit lighter. We're looking for the ability to be able to hit it straight, not to be able to hit it long. There are some, really good female golfers who want to hit it really well, but if you watch the professional golfers, men and then the women, and you see how they play very differently. The women have such a different swing. It's a lot slower and it's a lot more fluid in regards to what it is. So I think they protect their bodies a little bit better.
What a surprise. Women are more sensible, Andrea, I think is what we've arrived at there, and I don't think any of us would dispute it. Let's talk about the industry and your path in the industry. And I imagine this is probably sometimes an awkward topic. One day there will be a time when we won't talk about the fact that there's a woman who's a GM, but at the moment you're the only female GM of a Sandbelt golf club. What's that journey been like? And not to get you in any trouble or tread on any toes, but has it been a different journey for you than had you been a man?
Absolutely. Without a doubt, I probably would have been a general manager 10 years ago if I'd been a male. I did struggle in that space a lot because I also had come from the hospitality sector. So for a lot of people, they saw me as a hospitality person and not as someone who would be a good general manager. And, in all honesty, I applaud the inside of the board at Yarra Golf Club because they saw past that and they saw that I would be a really great general manager for their golf club. But the journey itself has been a difficult one, and it started at Peninsula, and while I will be very reluctant to name names, I did go to someone who was high up in the golf industry early on and said, waitressing is not what I want to do all my life, and I'm willing to put in the hours and do all the study I need to do. And I did all of that. I did my business diploma. I did a marketing and also graphic design and also HR. I have a master's in HR as well. And I put the hard yards in as well as working. But the advice I was given by this particular gentleman high up in the industry was, virtually a pat on the head saying, you know, women don't make it in this industry and I advise you to be happy in the position you're in. So it sort of was that journey that started with that, and then the push all the way through to try and get recognised in the industry, which was really, really difficult.
Are we past that now, at
No.
least?
No,
Really?
we're not. No, we're not. No, I don't believe that we are at all. I think that when you have a lot of older board members who are looking to engage a general manager, they don't always see past the gender. They see what we're going to have as a strong person to lead us into the next phase of our golf club, and they're not always insightful. So it hasn't shifted a lot, I think, and then we've got a long way to go.
That's quite confronting, isn't it? How did you feel when that? I can't imagine what it would be like to have that. That's never been said to me, anything like that. I've been told, you know, you wouldn't be suitable for this job or that job for all sorts of reasons. But that sort of condescending, you can't make it because you've got blue eyes, essentially, or brown eyes, that great experiment.
Or blonde hair.
Or blonde hair, or whatever
Exactly.
it might be.
Exactly.
There's two ways you can respond to that, Andrea. You can say, thanks very much, I'm going to another industry. Or you can decide to stay. I don't know, is there an element of prove that wrong or make a pathway for future generations? Why did you choose to stay in the golf industry despite that?
I think because I was lucky enough to procure jobs in really good golf clubs where I was really happy, I was comfortable to sit in the second chair for a few years, and I think that when I started to apply for general managers' roles, in my opinion, I was more qualified than a lot of the people that actually got the positions, and I applied for one job, and it was being vetted by an ex-general manager of a golf club, and he didn't even give me a look in regards to the first interview stage. So I was knocked out within the first round without even getting an interview with the board. He told me I wasn't ready, and that the club itself wasn't probably ready for a female general manager. So those were the obstacles I had all the time. And
How long ago was that, Andrea?
That
incident happened, yeah.
6 years ago. So by the time I got to Royal Melbourne, I was eager to move on to a general manager's position. And to be honest with you, the general manager who's there now, Warwick Hill-Rennie, he was very active in assisting me with that. He really promoted my skill sets in the industry and talked about, you know, what I was capable of doing, and that, you know, I was ready to move into a role, but I did get a couple of knockbacks, and I think I got to the end where I thought, this is probably where I'm going to sit, and I just made that decision that was what was going to happen for me, and so I thought, well, I've finished up at one of the top 5 golf courses in the world as the second in charge, and I can hang my hat on that. And I decided not to apply for any more general managers' jobs, even though I wanted to finish my career as a general manager. So when I decided that I was going to leave Royal Melbourne Golf Club, I thought I'd probably just do consulting or go into HR, use my masters and do something completely different, and look for something probably outside the industry. But I was approached by the board here at Yarra and considered that, and I'm really glad that I did. So
there's two very powerful things have happened there, haven't there? You've given up, you said. That's
I
it.
did.
That dream's beyond me.
I did, yes.
And then an olive branch is the wrong term, but you've had an opportunity extended to you not long after. Two very powerful opposite things happening there. What was that time like? That's not a small decision to have. That's a career to become 2IC at Royal Melbourne. Globally,
it is.
You would find thousands of people who would say, I would be happy with that as a career. So there's no downside of that. But to have given up on the notion of going a step further, that's a very big statement to say to yourself, isn't it?
It is, and also I think I felt like I couldn't prove anything more to the industry. You know,
If I'm not good enough now, I'm never going to be.
Well, exactly right, because I'd been the acting general manager of Kingston Heath for 6 months in the role of general manager, and assisted them with an $8.5 million clubhouse rebuild project, which I looked after for the 6 months before there was any general manager there. And then at Royal Melbourne, obviously wonderful Paul Rack, he was sick for 6 months prior to passing away. So I did the majority of his role during that time, and then for 6 months afterwards. So to prove that, you know, I could run one of the best golf clubs in the world and still not be able to procure a job as a general manager anywhere else was a bit downheartening for me. So I just made the decision that I wasn't going to put myself through that anymore. So,
and are you convinced that it's because you're a woman? No other reason?
Well, I would say not to, what would I say, to build myself up in any way. I don't want to think that I'm not being humble, but my skill sets and my diversity is, you know, bar none. I have an amazing resume, and if you put Andrew Watson on that resume, I would have walked into numerous jobs. So that's I do think it was a gender thing, and you know it's very, very difficult for boards to take on that and say we're going to be one of the first that are going to promote and put somebody in the role as a female, which is a very male-dominated industry. So boards tend to be a little bit less risk takers. They want to please the rest of the membership, and they do. They have to please, you know, 1,200, 1,500 members who look at their decisions and say, "Why did you do that?"
All of that's true, of course. There's a couple of things that's wrong. First of all, of course, there's not that many GM jobs running around. An awful lot of blokes would have missed out on all those jobs as well, which is what some people would point to.
Yes.
I think what you're suggesting is probably right, though. There's no question you're at least qualified. And to not get to the interview stage at that one you mentioned, there's no question what's happened there, which makes me think about, I think it's a bit of a trend now, and you're a HR expert, this notion of blind resume or blind job seeking, where resumes turn up with no names, no gender attached,
yes,
and decisions are based just on qualifications. Is that I heard somebody was in my podcast studio talking about it the other day. I thought it was an intriguing idea.
It is intriguing, but the problem with that is that you also have to have that face-to-face interview, because with everybody that you interview, intellectual interviewing is really important. You need to have an aspect of it to be able to say, I understand you've got these great qualifications, but I need to speak to you one-on-one to find out, do you fit culturally to the club? You know, will we gel with you? You know, do we feel that you're the right person from an emotional fit for our business? And
there's more to it than just resumes, isn't there?
There's so much more to it than that, and it's always going to come to that with that one-on-one, because you just wouldn't engage someone in a position of such authority without having that one-on-one aspect of it.
And it's a real people role too, isn't it, as a GM? You're essentially the ultimate people person. That's what you do, deal with people all the time.
It is.
I want to back up just a little bit. You mentioned boards taking risks. Is it still seen as a risk to have a woman as a GM? And why, I wonder? It doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about it, does it?
It doesn't. It doesn't, and I think that Yarra looked past that. And
to their eternal credit, by the way, that somebody has to break the mould, and
they
good on Yarra for doing that.
They do, and I think they looked past gender and looked at qualifications and said, if we want someone in the industry who is has a lot of sandbelt experience, has a lot of general managers experience, who should we be looking for? And they looked to me, which was nothing to do with gender, and I don't think that they even look. And I don't think they ever looked at whether I was a female or whether I was a male. They just looked at, was I the right person for this club, and they offered me the role. So
Nirvana, let's hope we get to that. All golf clubs and the entire industry. I think we're probably a ways away from that, because of course you walked into Yarra here, not just COVID, a massive course renovation with Tom Doak, under global scrutiny. Yarra Yarra is known globally. Tom Doak is known globally. People were interested. So there's a whole bunch of other things going on there.
There is.
What's that been like? And within all that, I imagine that, like me and several others, have expressed surprise. Oh, there's a woman GM at Yarra Yarra. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, isn't there?
There is. Look, I think that a lot of people don't, especially here and now in the industry, especially the sandbelt industry, I think because I was so well known through the general managers of the sandbelt anyway, that was just a natural transition for them. They were all great. They were amazing. They were very inviting, and I'd spent a lot of time with them, so it was fantastic. But yes, you're right. Yarra Yarra was definitely being focused on for a range of different reasons.
And you, Andrea, how's that been for you personally?
I don't know that actually there's been a lot of focus on me, to be honest with you. I think the focus has been on the golf club itself and the things that we're actually doing at the moment, and the course itself, which is just pure golf. It really is. It's amazing, and all credit to Tom Doak and to the committee of the time that made that decision that they would look back and say, what have we done wrong, and how much tinkering has occurred, and what do we want to do to bring it back to where it should be. And the Alex Russell design is an amazing design, and being able to restore the course back to where it was, knowing that they would get a lot of member feedback, both good and bad, and all the tree huggers and all those type of things, was a brave move for them to make. So I think that Yarra Yarra, they're mould breakers. I think that's what they do. They have looked over the last 5 or 6 years to break the mould and not be what they used to be. And I think that's to their credit, and they've come a long way because of it, because they're very visionary, and the board's very visionary, and they're very supportive too as well. So
quite a bit of upheaval for what's a generally pretty serene space. The Sandbelt Golf Clubs of Melbourne, we're all guilty of not liking change. There's a whole lot of stuff going on there. What was it like internally at the club? And I'm sure that you would have heard a lot of the feedback, and much of it from the squeaky wheels, I'd imagine.
I think that the membership, there was a little bit of a division in regards to the members that didn't want change. And
the course
and
especially, members are very attached to golf holes.
They are. And, we didn't just change the golf course, we rerouted it, so they had to learn different aspects of it. And when you're it's different when you're a social golfer, because it doesn't make any difference because you're playing different holes all the time. But when you're a member of a private golf club, you learn aspects of the golf course that nobody else knows, and when someone comes along and changes that, well, it's really upheavaling for them. So they look at it and they go, well, I'm not, it doesn't feel the same for me. So I think it was it was disruptive for the members, not only for the fact that we were changing the golf course, but also they didn't have all holes in play at any particular time. So they went through a lot of change, and to their credit, they did support the committee. They saw that the changes were going to be positive ones and that it was needed for the golf course. So I think they all were very supportive of that decision and carried through all of the difficult months and probably nearly 2 years.
Long time, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is. And, that also affected a range of different things, including the club's ability to get other golfers on the golf course and to have corporate golf and all those type of things, which was also going to affect our revenue streams. So they went through it tough to get to the other side, but they're definitely out the other side now. And as I said, it's pure golf. It's absolutely beautiful out there, and everybody who comes to play just loves it. And it's amazing the amount of inquiries we have for membership once they've played golf here. Fabulous. They're just like the membership's inviting and engaging. It's a really great social club. As I said, Yarra Yarra is the community. That's what it is. Yeah. And that's what I really love about this club.
You've done a brilliant thing, Andrew. You've answered my next question, which was going to be, has it been worth it? I think you've pretty much said yes there.
Rod, look, I have to admit, I love the job and I love the challenges. The president, Danny McGrady, said to me when I took on the role, he said, "We're really glad that you're here, but we need you to understand there's going to be some challenges." And he reminded me of that last week, that I had accepted that. So, yes, there are. But obviously no one could have ever predicted that COVID was going to be in there, and that's been one of our biggest challenges, is to be able to manage that. But it's fingers crossed. It's been exciting. It's been challenging, but I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you have daughters, obviously.
Three daughters,
amongst your 6. Beautifully yes. Done. Well done. How do you feel about the world that we're leaving them? We've talked about some of the challenges you've had along the way, just for being a woman. No other reason, just for being a woman. And every time I think about that, it just seems so crazy. And I'm sure I'm guilty of many of the things that have made the world a difficult place for you to live in, a more difficult place than it needs to be. So we've all got something to learn, obviously. Are you familiar with Megan McLaren at all, the golfer?
Yes.
She writes quite a bit on Nicole. We had her on the podcast.
Yes.
And we talked about this. Almost by accident, she's become a bit of a lightning rod for gender issues in golf. And she gave it a lot of thought about accepting that sort of role. What are her responsibilities there? Her goal in life is to be the best golfer she can be. There's no other way to say it. There's some distractions with that sort of stuff. Do you feel any of that yourself?
I think I feel an obligation to assist women in the industry who have struggled, and I think we're our own worst enemies, to be honest with you. I think this is one of the things that needs to be addressed, is that men don't hold grudges, and they're more than willing to pull each other up the ladder, and they're not concerned about that, so they're always making recommendations and getting other people to come up the ladder. Women have a different viewpoint, and they can be quite what would the right word be, insecure when they move into senior roles, and they tend to push women down the ladder rather than grab them up the ladder and bring them along for the ride. So I think that women are their own worst enemies, and I think that's what needs to be addressed more than anything else, is educating women that they don't need to be men, that they bring a whole different aspect to business, and it's very unique in regards to what it is, but they shouldn't feel intimidated by other strong and powerful women coming up behind them. And what they should do is mentor and encourage them, which they struggle with, and it's to their detriment. And I think that's the main reason why there aren't enough females in senior roles, is because we are our own worst enemies.
That's true of not just golf, obviously. You only have to look at the whole world.
Across
business, politics, industry, everywhere you look.
Exactly.
There are nowhere near as many women as statistically there should be. Taking all emotion out of it, statistics show there should be more women in there. I wonder, Andrea, have you got any thoughts as to why that might be? Why women, for want of a better term, why women who make it might not be interested in helping other women up the ladder as well? Is it a competitive thing? No,
I think it's an insecurity thing. I think that a lot of women feel that they need to be males, so they change who they are inherently, and they try to be tough and strong and all those things that are not, they're not necessarily great women traits. Women bring just different aspects to a business, and we bring a lot of emotional intelligence to a business, which is really amazing. And if we can get to the point where we can accept that and not try to be men but actually try to be women, we will move forward in leaps and bounds. So I think that my legacy I would like to see for me is to promote more women in the business, to have a look in the industry and see which women want to move forward and how we can mentor them and get them into those roles, and find out where in the industry we're failing with Golf Management Victoria, Golf Management Australia, Golf Australia, where we are actually failing to look at those aspects of it and to start to look at what women are eager to move forward, because they may not be moving forward for a range of different reasons. And I'll give you a classic example of, I know of several women in the industry who want to move forward, but the general managers are more willing to bring up the males in their business rather than the females. The males are asked to go and play golf. The males are asked to go to attend events, and these women are not getting asked to do those things. So they're the ones that I want to help to move forward and to help them to recognise that they have really amazing talent. We're really lucky here because we have not only just a female general manager, but we have a female operations manager and a female golf pro too as well. So, which is very unique for a golf club.
It is, Andrea. I'll ask you about perhaps the impact of that in a moment. But overall, are you optimistic about those things you're talking about being more achievable than they were maybe this time last year or 5 years ago? Are we moving in the right direction?
I think it takes people like myself to voice that and to push that forward, because if we don't be those voices for all those other women, then I don't think it will happen. Mm-hmm. You take a look at corporate golf days, for instance, and I know for a fact that there are many women in business who are females, but when you have a corporate golf day, 99% of them are males, because they're the ones that are being invited to play golf, not the females, and it happens all the time. So we need to do things like have a female corporate golf day, and we just finished having an all-female twilight event, and those things where women can actually be a little bit more recognised for what they do, which is it's difficult because the balance is so out of whack. For the golf industry, but it's a great sport for females and males. So in truth, it should be completely balanced.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've always struggled to understand why. If you just deal in generalisations, you would think golf would be more appealing to women than many other sports. I think there's been a generational change there with AFLW and soccer and cricket and those sorts of things. And
absolutely.
5 years, I think, are outdated and we're possibly wrong, but it always felt to me like golf should be one of the more appealing. There's no bashing into others, no running around and sweating. It's competition, very dignified sort of it's what always appealed to me. I was never into those other sports.
And you can always wear some really great clothes too as well.
It's never been my thing, as you can tell, Andrea, but that's a very in a business sense. What's the business case for golf having been the way it's been for so long, essentially excluding half of the population from spending any money in the industry?
I don't think that we're in an era now where we're excluding half of the population. I think that women need to come to terms with the fact that it is an all-encompassing sport now. So, when we get to the stage where there is no gender, no red tees, white tees, where competition golf is competition golf and you pick what tee you play off and you just play under your handicap, it will get to that stage. But it's going to take clubs to recognise and accept that and to do that in order to move forward.
Which brings nicely into focus one of the tricky roles as a GM. Your customers are the members, but there's a responsibility for clubs generally and people in positions of authority to lead the way on some of those cultural shifts. That's unlikely to come from the membership. So how do you handle that, leading the members in a certain way that change needs to come? Culture.
It's a really big word in the golf industry, as you would be aware of. I mean, seriously, it's what we hammer our heads against all the time, is the what members perceive as the culture of their club that they don't want to change. It's a very tricky subject, and it's not going to happen overnight, because members are members of golf club, as I said before, because of community. Community is all about the culture of the club, and if they feel like it's the right culture for them, they're going to keep coming back again and again and again. So you are going to hit your head against the wall a fair bit in regards to the whole word culture, because you hear it bantered about every single day. Seriously, every single day. So I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a gradual change.
Generational, perhaps? Might take a generation?
Yeah, and I think that the generations before have made change. and the generations before that have made change. If you have a look at what golf was like 80 years ago and 60 years ago and even 50 years ago, you'll see that there has been change. And if you look at it from there to now, it's quite radical in regards to what it is. So I think it's always going to be a very gradual type of thing that happens, and understanding that, yes, we do, as clubs, we want to instill in everybody a sense of pride, and that comes with things like dress codes and all those type of things. But does a dress code with having someone come in a nice pair of jeans and a polo shirt mean that they're not going to be a cultural fit, or they're not going to play good golf, or they're, there's some traditions that need to still be addressed quickly, because it is hindering our progress for those little things that don't really make a difference to culture in any way, shape or form.
They tend to be the dumb traditions, don't they? The dress code really is... I'm not asking... I know how contentious it is, but it always surprises me why dress upsets people so much.
I think it's setting a standard, so that you can feel like there is a standard for your club. It's the same in a lot of businesses. When you look at it, it's the way that the businesses tell their staff they need to dress, whereas it wouldn't make the staff any less better at their jobs if they came in jeans and t-shirts. But it's an image, and I think that's really important as well. But I think that golf clubs have a very social aspect to them, which is what they don't grasp, is that I was a member of a golf club for quite a few years, and it was just around the corner from where I lived. So I live far away from where I work, so it was really convenient for me. I would finish work and then go out and play golf. But if I wanted to go down on a Sunday and take my husband or my kids down to have some lunch or anything like that, and I was out, I'd been out shopping and I was in jeans and a t-shirt, well, I was totally unable to drop into my own club and have a bite to eat and, just have a chat to the rest of the members. And I think that's very inhibiting, because it shouldn't matter. It's the social aspect that we're not grasping for golf clubs.
It's to the detriment of the business, and we're going to come to that in a moment. I just wanted to make this one point, which I always feel about the dress code, is lots of very nicely dressed people have committed heinous acts over the years. It's not a great barometer of what sort of person you are as to how you dress.
That's really true.
Business, pre-COVID,
yes,
golf had been in a 20-odd year battle for how to figure out the business model going forward, falling membership numbers, though not necessarily participation numbers, changing cultures, a changing customer base, new people coming to golf not wanting the same things that old did, that previous generations had. And golf business was responding because it had to. For its very survival, golf had to change business models. Will that be the driver ultimately of cultural change? The financial realities that you won't get a new generation of members if you continue to do the things the way you're doing them now necessarily?
I think that's a really tricky question. Look, I think golf's gone through a radical change because of COVID. That's without a doubt. But looking at why it's gone through that radical change is really important. And I think that's something that the golf industry is not really addressing. We're seeing really huge spikes in membership. But why are we seeing really huge spikes in membership? Now, my husband's a social golfer, so he has a group of 4 people he's been playing with since day dot. So they've always played as a group, and they've always been social golfers, and none of them have ever joined golf clubs. But it was interesting, during COVID, 3 of the 4 of them joined golf clubs. Now, why did they join golf clubs is the question. So I sat down and just had a bit of a chat and asked, well, why did you suddenly join a golf club? And they said, because we didn't have access to the clubs that we normally would have access to. So being able to go out and play regularly, they were constantly told, no, I'm sorry, we can't, we're totally private now. We're only to our members now. No, we don't have any tee times because all the social golfers are taking them up, because they were just pushed into those aspects of it. So I think that change has happened because of the fact that the social golfers don't get access that they got before. But will that change in 2 or 3 years'
Is
time?
Is it sustainable, this boom, Andrea, is the question.
It's a really big question to ask, is will they stay as members of the golf club? And that's where we have to refine what we do and how we integrate them to help them to understand that it is more than just golf. It's about community. It's about the socialisation of it that comes with golf clubs, and educate them that that's the case. So our new members coming in, it's really important for us to understand what we need to do to keep them and how we integrate them as good members of the club too as well. So I don't know that it's going to be sustainable. I think that there is going to be a reverse at some point in time, and clubs will naturally do that for financial reasons. They will start to say we're introducing social golfers once again, and that will just naturally happen. So it will be very interesting in 3 years' time to see what this looks like.
Do you sense that people in the industry are thinking about that? Of course, one of the great problems of golf, which is also one of its great strengths, is it's incredibly fragmented. We don't have a czar. And a czar would be a fabulous idea if it was me, obviously, not if it was anybody else. But it is a very fragmented industry, isn't it? It's a collection of private entities all doing their own thing, even at the administrative level. The RNA, the USGA and Golf Australia and all of those things, sometimes to its detriment, but I do think it's also to its strength sometimes. But as an industry, do you think golf is thinking about that? Or have a lot of people in the industry just taken a huge sigh of relief and gone, oh, thank God golf's back, and not given any thought to what's going to happen in 3 years?
Look, I can't talk for the rest of the industry, honestly. I don't know what people are thinking in regards to what this boom is all about, but I'm certainly thinking about how sustainable it is, and I've spoken to other people who have their head in the clouds. They just think it's just the best thing since sliced bread.
No need to change. Golf's perfect. Look at it. It's selling like hotcakes. It must be the perfect product.
So I think there's different schools of thoughts, but for me personally, I don't know how sustainable it is, and it'll be interesting to watch this space in a few years' time.
Whose responsibility is it to drive that? Is it just each individual facility, I guess?
I think it's about education. It's about understanding what the reason is. I think Golf Australia have a need to do that, to educate clubs about what this is about at the moment, what this boom is, what's caused it, give us some really strong data and get some feedback across the board in regards to new members and what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and not just individual clubs, but right across the board. Some really good data would be really important. I really do think that's Golf Australia's responsibility to do that, to help all golf clubs right across the board to see, what direction they're taking, and if they need to shift, because it's going to be too late to shift when the change actually is happening.
Yeah, that's what we had. That's what we discovered last time, if I could put it that way, isn't it? Back in the early 2000s, late 90s, as golf started to flounder in Australia. Like the GM, Golf Australia has land at its feet every responsibility. I say they should do this, and they also should do that, and they also should do that. Are they doing a good job, do you feel, in that industry side? Because they've got many masters.
Oh, very contentious question.
It really is. To dodge it if you like.
No, look.
You would imagine what a difficult. It's not much different to being here, I imagine, where you have 10 different people who want 10 different things, and all of them are legitimate.
I think it's a little bit of an upside-down business model too as well. The bottom tends to dictate what the top needs to do. So I think it's a very difficult position to be in to not actually have the real governance over it. And I will probably be a little bit contentious here in saying that I think when COVID happened, all golf clubs were looking for serious direction, someone to guide us and lead us and help us, because we were in such unknown territory. But, with all due respect, so were Golf Australia, but we all looked to them to say, okay, what do we need to do? When do we need to close? When do we need to open? What do we need to do with that? What do we need to do with this? And we found that lacking. We didn't find that we had that guidance that we actually needed, and a lot of times we were making decisions as groups and then leading the way, and then afterwards the announcements would come from Golf Australia, which mirrored what we were actually doing. So I think I found that quite difficult because they are, and you know, our affiliation fees are not small fees. No. We as clubs, especially the private golf club sectors, we pay a lot of money to Golf Australia, and I'm not trying to be detrimental to them in any way, shape or form, be derogatory, but I think that lack of real leadership is not there at the moment.
Yeah, the clue's in the title, isn't it? Golf Australia. It is a huge job. It doesn't make it easy, and it doesn't mean they'll always get it right, but
no.
It is a real position of responsibility, isn't it?
It is.
I suppose. What do you see sort of for the future, Andrea? Have you got, if I said to you, what would be your message to other GMs in the industry about all of this stuff, about the industry, about the future of the business, about the role of women and gender?
I think we need to. What would the right word be? Morph right across the board as GMs, as an industry, as golfers, everything. Our business models. We just need to morph out of where we are and start to recognise that change is not a bad thing, and that it's imperative that we continue to evolve and move forward. I don't know. I love, and I did say to you earlier on that I would talk a little bit about Vision 2025. I love the fact that Golf Australia actually grabbed that world model and made a decision to adapt it to golf clubs and put some pillars in place and send it out to all the golf clubs and say, look, we want you to embrace this. And that's really fantastic because that's visionary to do that no matter what. But I think a lot of the golf clubs have missed the what that's all about. So if I talk to probably 50% of the golf clubs, they would say it's about growing grassroots golf for women. And they wouldn't think of anything else other than that. They don't stop to think about the fact that it's about boards and women on boards and about staffing and about, you know, I mean, you have a look at the horticultural industry, the grass growers, and 99% of them are males, and it's really difficult for women to get into those roles, mainly because they're not recognised as people to do that, but also because the facilities don't allow for it. So there has to be shower facilities, there have to be bathroom facilities, there has to be all those other things that come with it, and they're not built or equipped for any of that stuff, and they're not going to build special toilets and special showers to employ one woman. So I think we just need to morph and move forward and have a look at everything across the board and just give it a little bit of a shake.
Yeah. This is probably an unanswerable question. It's beyond the scope of, I imagine, either of us, or in fact we've grappled with these things forever. But what would be different about the industry if more women were in positions of, and we could probably just broaden that to the whole world, if women were in more positions of power and influence and genuine decision-making? How would golf be different?
It's a very interesting question to ask.
Would golf be different?
Yes, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know how to answer that. I think that women should be given the opportunity right across the board, just not because they're women, but because of their skill sets. And women in golf, I think it's difficult to go in to a club where you've got 15% of the membership is women and 85% of the membership is male. There's always going to feel like there's that little bit of an imbalance. So until we get the balance correct, and that's going to take change, as I said before, with no gender competitions and no gender teas and all those type of things. I think that's going to be what's going to change it. And I think women bring a whole different aspect to everything, whether it's golf or whether it's business. We're different creatures. You know, we've all read the book Women Are From Venus and Men Are From Mars, and we're very different people in regards to who we are. So we all see things very differently, but coming together and sharing commonalities is really important. So I don't think the industry is going to be any better by having more women in it, but I think women don't get enough opportunities to do that, that's all.
Yeah, and that's really about exclusion, isn't it, for no real reason, just that brown eye, blue eye experiment, which I still am fascinated with every time I see it. Last couple of things, Andrea. You went from, I give up, I'm not going to get there,
yes.
I'll put my dream on the shelf,
yes.
to here you are now.
Yes.
Living a part of your dream. I'm sure your life's much bigger than just your job. So what does the future hold for Andrea?
Oh, interesting question. I would like to be here for a few years and leave the club in a better position than it was when I started. I think that's really important for me to do. And from there, I don't know. I'm not thinking that far ahead. I'm just enjoying right now, right here. I'm enjoying being the general manager of Yarra Golf Club. And it's and the experiences that it brings, and I'm not looking too far to the future at the moment. I think as you get older, you tend to live more in the moment than in the future.
The closer it gets, the more you don't want to think about it. Yes.
Whereas young people tend to live for the future, we tend to be the ones that put down our phones and watch the concert rather than videotaping it.
Video it and then never watch it again down the track. Well, 6 kids and all these years in Sandhill administration, you'd be well due for early retirement if that's what you chose to do. I wanted to close by asking you about, you mentioned the name earlier on, Paul Rack.
Yes.
Lots of people listening to this podcast would have known Paul, a genuinely legendary figure in golf administration, which is no easy thing to achieve. I'm yet to meet anybody who's had a bad word to say about Paul. Perhaps just talk a little bit about him. It was a very powerful time when he passed. I remember seeing some of the pictures. His funeral was enormous. They couldn't fit people anywhere near the place. Talk about perhaps Paul, and whilst I would doubt he, having met him, would have been deliberately trying to make the industry. His legacy is quite extraordinary, isn't it?
It is. Paul was a very unique person in the fact that he was authoritative and humble. And to find that mix of somebody who can be both of those is very different. And he was quietly spoken. At board meetings, he didn't actually say a lot. He would just listen and wait for the board to ask him a question, and then he answered it with absolute authority every single time, but he didn't interject. He always knew everything about everybody. Paul had not many people know this, but Paul actually had a photographic memory. So he was great in regards to recognising people, and he would meet people that he hadn't seen for 5, 6, 7 years, and he would say, you know, how are you, Joe, and how's your wife, Mary, and just and he was known for his legendary handshake, which was, you know, but Paul came through the hospitality industry as well, and he recognised that there were talents out there that didn't necessarily come from the business sector, but actually were people who could work their way through the business. He was amazing to work with. His philosophy was, we're in the business of member satisfaction, nothing more, nothing less. And if we can't achieve that, then we're not doing our jobs effectively. Paul and I became very good friends many, many years ago, and we developed a very strong friendship. We were good friends up until he passed away, so for 15 years. And it was devastating to see him in the last year of him, you know, just suddenly his whole body just eroded, and it was really, really tough. But I think the thing about Paul was that he was one of those people that if you went to any type of meeting, whether it was a GMV meeting or a GMA meeting or a Golf Australia meeting, he would look for the person that was new. And he would go straight up and he would introduce himself and he'd say, you know, I see I haven't seen you before, you know, who are you, you know, what are you doing? And I can assure you that a lot of the golf managers have had that experience with him when they first came in to actually say they met Paul Rack not because they met him, but because he met them. So, and he always had that way about him. And his authority was very, very quiet. I can remember when I was out playing golf and I was still quite new to the game and he was telling me, you know, you need to get lessons and those type of things. And we played in a couple of GMV golf days and I was still topping the ball every now and then. And if I topped the ball, I'd look at him and he'd just look at me and he'd just tap the top of his head and he'd go up and down like this and then he'd walk away. And that was his whole thing and it was so frustrating. I was like, I know I'm topping the ball. But he just had a very quiet, gentle way about him, but with that wonderful air of authority that when he spoke, people just knew because he was just so knowledgeable. He just knew this industry inside and out and back to front. And getting his Order of Australia medal was wonderful for him. And he was such a humble man that when he was put up for the Order of Australia medal, he actually said, "Oh no, I don't think I want that." That's how humble he was. But he did get it.
Isn't it?
Yeah, he did get it posthumously, obviously, because he passed away 4 days before it was presented. So, but just a very unique and wonderful person.
As the GM at Royal Melbourne, that's not just being a GM at a golf club. It's an internationally regarded, and it's a bit of a player in the international golf scene, isn't it? His impact is much broader than just the club, the Sandbelt, or Australia, isn't it? His impact on the game. It's quite extraordinary when you think about it. The influence that position holds at that golf club. We're very lucky in Australia to have Royal Melbourne, I think. It's such a beacon of the game.
It is
here in Australia.
It is, and it's amazing because it is such a world-renowned place that even as the second in charge of Royal Melbourne, I've travelled the world, and when I went to other golf clubs and said, I work at Royal Melbourne Golf Club. It was amazing, the doors that it opened. You know, people just were like, wow. They were just blown away and they'd ask you so many different questions. But it's interesting because Paul really wanted to promote people in the industry. So whenever those type of things happened, he was always quick to say, well, I want to send this staff member or I want to send this staff member. He never put himself in that front limelight to do those things. And when we had, at Royal, we had the Asia Pacific Amateur Championship, which was run by Augusta and the RNA. What an amazing tournament that was. I can't even begin to tell you what it was like working with Augusta in regards to that. But they actually invited a group of Royal Melbourne people over the year before to experience the Masters as their guests for 5 days. Wow. And Paul actually put me up to attend rather than himself, because that's the sort of person that he is.
Did you know?
I did.
There's another episode there, Andrea. What was that like?
One of the most amazing experiences I've ever had in the golf industry, because I met the tournament director, David Benny, because I was working with him for the Asia Pacific Amateur, and I got access to everything. So they took me everywhere and showed me inside the clubhouse and the kitchens and the wine cellars, and so much things that I don't know many people that actually got that, but to be their guest for 5 days was unbelievable and something I will never forget.
No, that is genuine 5 stars.
The whole story in itself.
6 story, yes. I could imagine there's 2 things I wanted to ask you about to finish up. One of them was, just on that Asia Pacific, I know it was special because as the media, we were allowed to dine in the clubhouse and we could even get cappuccinos. Normally as the media covering a tournament, you get those machines that you pop that. But at the Asia Pacific, you could go and you could order a cappuccino.
Is that the top? Is that
that's
top
as,
for
that's
media?
as
That's as good as it gets.
In Australia, in the media, generally at tournaments, we dine on party pies and sausage rolls.
Right.
That tends to be the fare. It has actually improved, in fairness, in recent years, but that's tended to be the way
I have to say the media tend to the President's Cup in 2019 it seriously blew me away. It was, Jeff's shed times 3 with everything you could possibly imagine inside it, the layout of it, and what was inside it was just world class. And the President's Cup, they do it. They just do it world class. And to have that tournament twice and to do that tournament twice was just an unbelievable experience. And I think people forget how prestigious that tournament actually is and how lucky we are to have had it, twice at one of the best golf courses in Australia. So
indeed. Behind the scenes, though, what was it like?
It was really good, actually. They were so organised and they had such a big team around them. They really did. And, just working with their team of people every single day for 6 months solid was amazing. Nothing went wrong because they didn't allow anything to go wrong. They were just very good at what they did, and they knew they were staging a world-class event, and they did it really, really well. So I loved working with them, and we built good relationships and those type of things as well.
Well, what a journey it's been for you already, Andrea, in this game. I'm sure you didn't expect any of this when you applied for that job at Peninsula Country.
No, it's reflecting back, it's been amazing, and I sometimes pinch myself to think where I was to where I am right now, and remember how lucky I am.
We all think we're in charge of our own lives, don't we? Until we look back and realise that in fact something else is driving it, because this was never part of the plan where I've ended up here.
Exactly right.
It's been fabulous to catch up with you today.
And you too.
Must come back and do all 10 of those other episodes that you've started the journey on today, but really appreciate you taking some time, Andrea. It's been lovely to meet you, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Quite the story there, I'm sure you'll agree, and thanks again to Andrea for being so generous with her time. And can I also recommend, if anybody hasn't done so yet and you get the opportunity, have a look at the new Yarra layout. Tom Doak has done some fabulous work down there on the Melbourne Sandbelt. Well, that's episode 42 done and dusted, but I hope you've made the effort to become a subscriber, because on episode 43, John Huggan continues to thumb through his impressive contact book and brings us a discussion with 3-time major winner and Ryder Cup captain, Padraig Harrington. That's next time on The Thing About Golf.